You didn't break anything. You didn't shout. You didn't leave slamming the door, but the end had already begun. It started in the silence, in that moment when something inside you stopped trying, stopped explaining, justifying, defending, believing. And for the first time, you didn't feel anger, you felt relief, because sometimes relief is the cruelest warning of all, that you no longer want what you once desired so much. And he didn't realize, because he was used to your arguments, to your efforts, to the love you carried in your heart, like someone carrying an entire house on their back. He mistook your exhaustion for calm. He thought it was peace, but it wasn't. It was you trying to survive the last disappointment. It was your spiritual energy fading away drop by drop, every time you swallowed another painful phrase, every time you said, "It's all good," to avoid starting over. You realized before that this cycle wouldn't lead you anywhere, that talking didn't help, that the same plea had to be made 10, 20, 30 times, and even then it didn't come. That's when your gaze shifted. You were still there, but you weren't really there. Your body remained present, but your soul was already saying goodbye in silence. And this kind of end is the most dangerous of all, because it comes like a breeze, not like a storm. It doesn't cause alarm, nor does it leave visible traces, but it takes everything away without warning. Do you remember the moment you realized? It wasn't when he messed up. It was when you no longer cared to correct him. Emotional exhaustion has this power. It transforms you without changing the tone of your voice. You continue to say the same phrases, but inside, you no longer believe in any of them. And that hurts not just you, but the part of you that still wanted to believe. That still said, maybe now he'll understand, if only he didn't understand, because he was listening with his ears and not with his heart. You spoke of your pain, and he thought it was just drama. You wanted his presence, and he returned with excuses. But one day you stopped asking. You didn't cry, you didn't fight, you didn't beg for attention. You didn't try to reveal everything you still held inside. You just became silent. And that silence was the beginning of the end, even if no one said it out loud. Have you ever been through this? Share your thoughts in the comments. When your limit is reached before any argument, he might think you ended things over a specific disagreement. He might tell others that you fought too much. But it wasn't about that, you know. The end didn't start with a fight. It began with the end of your hope to be seen, with your gaze fixed on the ceiling thinking, it's pointless to try anymore. It started when you stopped defending yourself, when you realized that no explanation would make him understand. Understand that you just wanted to be treated like someone who matters. You wanted a bond, not a battle. You wanted care, not control. You wanted love, not arguments. But what came was the opposite. And still, you persisted. Because those who truly love have a hard time giving up. They believe that one more conversation can resolve things. That one more request will touch his heart. That one more attempt will heal. But you only ended up getting hurt more. And then it happened. One day you woke up, and you no longer felt that desire to make it work. It was subtle. It wasn't hate. It wasn't trauma. It wasn't desperation. It was emptiness. The kind of emptiness that arrives when you stop expecting. And this kind of end is almost imperceptible, except for those who have felt it in their soul. If this resonated with you, comment, "I needed to hear this." When love demands too much effort, it ceases to be love. You gave yourself completely. You made concessions, you stayed quiet, you made plans, you did everything you could. But you realized it was always you doing the work, always you paddling, always you fighting against the emotional tide of someone who didn't know what they had, because he got used to your strength, to your empathy, to your forgiveness, with your usual habit of trying one more time. He thought you wouldn't leave, that you would always come back, but he didn't understand. The danger of losing someone who no longer fights is that she no longer wants to win. She just wants to go away. And you did. Maybe not physically. Maybe you're still there, staring at the ceiling, pretending that it still matters. But inside, you are no longer there. You no longer see yourself in the future you once dreamed of with him. You no longer smile when you hear his name. You no longer feel nostalgia. You feel sorry for yourself for having endured so much, and that hurts. Because you didn't want it to be this way. You wanted it to work out, but not alone. You didn't want him to change everything. You just wanted him to notice, to care, to not let love slip through his fingers like someone spilling water on purpose. But he did, and now you are here. Trying to understand how you lost yourself so much, because of someone who never learned to value your presence. This conversation doesn't end here. We're going deeper. If you felt this pain, leave a black heart down below. If you know someone going through this, share it with her now. You stayed for more days than you should have, for more nights than you could bear, for more wounds than your heart could withstand. And you know why? Because you still believed that some part of him at some moment would notice that you were slowly losing yourself, would notice that your silence wasn't lightness, it was discouragement, that your calm wasn't peace, it was surrender, that your "I'm fine" was coming out more and more devoid of spirit. You kept staying, but you were no longer really there. Yes, your body still got up every day, still replied to messages, still said goodnight with a tired voice, but something in you had already left, and the worst part is that no one saw it, because your end didn't have an explosion. There was no crisis, there was no noise, there was just a long and devastating silence. It's in this kind of silence that the strongest women get lost, because you kept going, productive, present, but inside, nothing made sense anymore. Have you ever caught yourself staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the exact moment you stopped feeling something for him? It didn't happen overnight, it was a slow emptiness, a kind of invisible death, and it hurts to say that, because you didn't want to stop loving. You just wanted him to do the bare minimum, the essential, the noticeable, but he didn't. And now, you look at him and see a stranger, or worse, you see a man who only seemed tall because you shrank down too much. Have you ever experienced something similar? Share with me in the comments how emotions deteriorate when the basics fail. You asked for presence, he gave promises. You asked for affection, he gave justifications. You asked for space to breathe, he surrounded you with insecurity. And when you started to go silent, he thought you were calmer. Little did he know that the calm he saw was, in fact, emotional apathy. Love doesn't disappear. It sickens. And little by little it loses its color, and when it loses color, it loses its flavor. And when it loses its flavor, it loses its desire. And when it loses its desire, the end began a long time ago, but he didn't notice, because he only looks outward. He doesn't perceive the heavy silences, he doesn't notice the distant gaze. He doesn't feel the emotional absence that is already living within the routine. Did you ever blame yourself? Did you think the problem was you? That maybe you were asking too much, feeling too much, talking too much? But it wasn't excess. It was lack. There was a lack of reciprocity, a lack of maturity, a lack of vision. And the most tragic of all, there was a lack of real perception of who you are. Because if he truly saw you, he would never have allowed you to dry up like this. When the soul decides to leave, no body can hold it back. You kept sleeping next to him, but you felt alone. You kept responding to messages, but you no longer opened up. You kept showing up at birthdays, dinners, and commitments, but inside, you were no longer the same woman. And that disconnection hurts, because you don't truly want to leave, you wanted to stay, but with dignity, with real love, with a presence that embraces you, not one that suffocates you. But that never came. And now you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel a huge weight for still trying to feel. This kind of emptiness no one sees, because it's a discrete emptiness, intelligent, silent, functional. You wake up, work, chat, post stories. But when you lay your head on the pillow, you know that no one has any idea how you're dying inside. And if someone asks, you still say, "I'm fine," because it's not worth explaining anymore. You've understood that those who need to understand don't. When feeling becomes memory, do you still remember how it was in the beginning? The good anxiety before seeing him, the butterflies with every message, the hope that this time it was finally your turn to be happy. Today, everything seems so distant. Not that it was all bad, but it was unequal. It was unfairly divided. It was unbalanced. You gave presence and received absence, gave depth and received short responses, gave plans and received promises, gave love and received comfort from your sacrifice. Did he love you? Maybe, but not in the way you needed, because loving someone without recognizing what the other person feels is just a love that serves one person only, and you're tired of that. You don't want a love that drains you. You want a love that sees you, that knows when to be silent, when to embrace, when to grow, when to change. But that never came, or it came too late. And now, you look back and realize that the woman you were in that relationship no longer exists. She died trying to be understood. She died tired of explaining herself. She died exhausted from asking for the basics. But a new woman is being born. One who doesn't know everything yet, but already knows one thing. She's no longer there. If this text resonates with you, comment, "That's me." When the end isn't a period, but the beginning of another version of yourself. The wildest part of it all is that you still feel love. But it's not for him, it's for you. It's for that woman who stayed silent, who endured, who tried, who dreamed, who believed for two. You start to feel love for her, and that gives you strength, because you're no longer there. Your body might still be, but your soul, it's already risen. It has realized that it can no longer accept scraps, that you didn't come into this world to fall apart in someone's absence, that you weren't born to fit into tightly closed hearts, nor to be chosen with hesitation. You were born to be truly seen, in all layers, even in those you fear to reveal, and those who can't do that don't deserve to have you. No one noticed. But on that day you stood up differently. You didn't scream, you didn't post indirects, you didn't give an overcoming speech, you just decided to stop bleeding for someone who couldn't stop your pain. It was in the details, in the simple act of saying no where you used to say yes, of putting your phone on silent and sleeping in peace, of responding less, of not responding at all. It was in the mirror, in the way you tied your hair back, in how you chose your outfit, in how you looked at yourself, and without fear, without rush, without excuses. It was in a song that played, and for the first time in a long time, you didn't think about him. You thought about you, and that's where it began. Your return, silent, intimate, deep, because truly starting over is never loud. It's internal, it's spiritual. It's when the soul understands that it will never again beg for love. What no one sees is what transforms the most. Have you noticed how the world only pays attention to change when it explodes outward? But real transformation happens in silence. On the days when you're alone in your room facing the messages that never came, the words that were never spoken, the promises that turned to dust, and yet you choose to move forward, not because you've overcome everything, but because you're tired of waiting for someone else to recognize what you've endured in silence. You started setting boundaries. You began to stop reacting impulsively. You started listening to yourself more. And for the first time in a long time, you noticed the sound of your own breath. Breathe, just that. Without weight, without tension, without fear. Breathe, knowing that no one else has the power to suffocate you. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Maybe they think you moved on too quickly. Maybe others judge the time you took to fall silent. But no one knows how much you fought to stay afloat. What seemed like coldness was self-protection. What they called distance was just you trying to find yourself again after getting lost in a love that didn't see you. And now, you no longer feel the obligation to explain, nor justify, nor convince anyone of your pain. You just want peace, and that changes everything. Because the woman who wants to prove something still needs validation, but the woman who wants peace, she has already recognized her own worth. The moment you stop trying to be remembered, you know that point where you finally understand. You won't get that apology. You won't hear the explanation you deserved. You won't be recognized as you should be. Well then, you arrive there, and instead of anger, you feel liberation. Because the truth is that the soul doesn't need closure. It needs movement. It just wants to start beating again. And when you stop waiting for the other person to make amends, you repair yourself. You stitch up your own wounds, you gather the pieces without haste, and you rebuild your inner home, room by room. Not for them to come back, but so that no one else can bring you down again. If you've ever felt this deeply, comment, "This reconstruction is mine." When you realize that it's always been you, the most painful point, and at the same time the most powerful, it's when you realize that it was never him, it's always been you. You who insisted, you who believed, you who loved for both. You who carried the weight of the relationship alone. And now, it's you once again who decides to stand tall. But this time it's different. This time, there's no more room for those who don't respect you. No more energy to beg for attention. No more time to retrace the same path of pain. You understand that self-love isn't selfishness. It's spiritual protection. It's you shielding yourself from what once broke you. And those who didn't get this, you will think you've changed. But it's not change, it's a return. You just came back to yourself, to the place where you always should have been. The soul doesn't return the same. You will love again, but in a different way, with a different intensity, with a different calmness. You will be able to identify the signs early on. You will recognize what you once tolerated. You will firmly refuse crumbs. You will choose yourself even when it's hard, because your soul didn't come back the same. It came back more aware, more perceptive, more whole. It picks up on things quickly now. It notices the energy of those who pretend to care. It notices the uncomfortable silences. It recognizes the difference between presence and obligation. And this awareness sets you free, because what binds you isn't the pain. It's the illusion that it could have still been different. But now you know. What needed to happen happened exactly as it should. So you could be reborn this way. You no longer need to be saved. It's here that you understand. You no longer want someone to come save you. You want someone to walk alongside you, someone who sees what you feel before it turns into tragedy, who chooses to stay without needing to be convinced, who has awareness and not just presence. And until then, that you are okay with your own company, because you've learned to be enough for yourself, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. And this kind of woman is rare, is profound, is whole, and no one will have you in halves anymore, not even you. If this text touched you deeply, write a word that defines you right now. And if you know someone who needs this fresh start, share it with them.